All right. Hello and welcome everyone to this session on production costing. We're going to go ahead and give the other attendees just a minute to arrive. We're going to get started in about 30 seconds, but I'm here with Ellington, and this is, again, the production costing session, so sit tight. All right. I think we're going to go ahead and get this party started. So welcome everyone to this Skills Kickstart session on the production costing confirmation dashboard and production cost. Our presenter today is Ellington, and he's going to be taking us through that. So go ahead and hand it off to him.
Okay, great. I have my slides ready. So welcome to Production Costing Skills Kickstart. You are going to learn so much today. And all about costing. So there I am. My name is Stephen Lehman. You'll find me as Ellington in the audits. I'm an implementation consultant here at Encompass Tech. The agenda for this meeting. We're going to go through recipe creation and see where costing gets set in those recipes, what causes that costing to get inflated in batch management through the expression of those unit of measures. And that's the most likely scenario, right? Is that our unit of measure gets inflated on one component and then it gets out of whack. We're going to walk through other costing tools on how you can fix that problem, recognize it earlier, talk about some of the logic involved in costing, and then how can you fix it, the order of operations to get that back on track. At the end of this presentation, what I want you to walk away with is understanding the origin of our cost calculations in Encompass, be able to review your own costing and identify any issues that you see, and then take action, craft a plan, correct that costing, and fix the problem that you find. So one other thing, I am going to hop back and forth a little bit here from the presentation to some of the real site examples so that you can see what those tools look like on your site instead of just these screenshots. So bear with me. I do hop around a bit to the costing tools as well. Costing, we try to make it as much of an exact science as we can, but there are a lot of pieces at work in the system. And so I will label them as we go. Okay, first, this is recipe management, a quick view here of the products we're going to be working with mostly throughout this presentation, and that's this Weyermann Munich Dark Type 2. It is a malt. And then on the right side here, the things that are important, the packages. So we see that unit of measure highlighted in the package in the screenshot there. That is in pounds. Now, we're going to look at that on the site as well and walk through some different pieces to what that means, right? Yeah, it means that we measure it in pounds, we can weigh it, but what does that look like in our batch? The product here is important. The setup of that package is important. Our product types are important, and how we can populate them into our recipes is also important. Uh, what could get us off track? Do we have a new vendor? Is this product coming in new measurements where they ship it to us in a different size than we consume it in our batches, right? Those are some things that could get us out of control with our costing, and here we can prevent it. So reviewing the costing in recipe management is going to be step one. To do that, I'm already going to hop out of this thing, and we're going to jump over here to our example. So this is recipe management. We can tell we've got it labeled up here in the top left. And this is our example recipe here, an Oktoberfest lager. So it's that season, and who would be reviewing costing? So say that I am going, I'm a head brewer, and I'm beginning this brewing process with my Oktoberfest for the season. He should have started, she should have started like 3 months ago, but that's okay. We're in it now. So we're building this Oktoberfest, and I want to make sure my recipe is good from the jump. Well, that's great because recipe management has your costing right here for you, right on the right side there. The basics of my recipe are here, but the big pieces are going to be down here in our products. So there's our dark type 2 that we're following through this. And we can see we're doing 220 units for this turn, and its unit of measure is pounds. And so we're expecting to have a lading cost of 96 cents per unit for an extended total cost here of $211.34. Pretty straightforward. We can track that all the way through our recipe, see our next stage, and so forth. So um, we can see that in batch management too, and I'll show you that when we get there. But this is the first line of defense. Now, one thing that will throw some people off here in recipe management is the freedom of it. We know that brewing is an art, not always an exact science when you're working with yeast and just improbable things. And so we want you to be a little more free here. And so when we add a recipe component, we don't populate by default. Let me put in my dark type here. We don't populate this unit of measure by default based on your package, right? Because your package may be one setting and then you may consume it in another. So if my package is pounds, but I consume it in grams, then I need to put grams here. And that's not a tough conversion for our system. That's going to be straight mass to mass. But if it is in pounds and I throw in fluid ounces here, okay, the system's going to struggle a little bit to make that connection. And that's where we're going to see the inflated price, inflated costing come through. So make sure, step one, we are setting our unit of measure correctly when we put in our components. And then you can review them here and make those changes, right? So fluid ounces bad, pounds good. All right, so this is what it should look like. Now, if I jump over, I have a demo of what it shouldn't look like, and we're going to walk through that too. So this is our October test batch. I know, pretty good, October test. So same deal here, same makeup on the recipe, 220. This one is in gallons, and but that's 220 units. It comes out to $122.96 per gallon. So a total cost of $27,000 extended over those 220 gallons, right? So this is way different than what we saw before. This is going to be astronomical by the time we get through a batch, and especially if we use this batch in packouts for finished goods, or if we use it to blend into other batches, it's just going to keep escalating.
Now, Ellington, we did have a question that came through the chat, and it's about that laid-in cost versus total cost. The question is, why do I see something that shows a laid-in cost of $0, but a total cost of 108? So this calcium chloride is showing us those numbers. Can you explain?
Yeah, so our laden cost is going to be well, your lading cost is going to be your total cost for us whenever we purchase that product. So if we looked at our purchase transactions, the total cost for this product could be zero. It could be very close to zero. We go out to 6 decimals. So um, it's probably more that this isn't showing all of the decimals for that lading cost, and it's very minute per unit in this case. And then when we multiply it out, we get a total cost there that populates. But that laden cost is just going to be everything that came in on that purchase. So it could be freight, it could be taxes that are associated if they're split between the products on that purchase, and then the cost specifically for this product on that purchase, all added into that laden cost. And so for this one, looks like it was pretty small. I'm sure there is some cost there, but like I said, it's within those 6 decimals in that range. And so when it's multiplied there, we can see the total cost, but it doesn't populate by default here.
I see. All right, thanks.
Mhm. Okay, so this is bad, right? That's a big cost. That's extreme for one product. This is going to be a very expensive batch for us if we proceed. So, at least in the system, right? And we want the system to mirror as well to true life as we can. So, we have to do something about this. Now, this is our first line of defense. We can change those unit of measures. We can set them right in our recipe components. We can confirm them on that product record. So, where else do I see that? Now, let's jump back to our slideshow here and keep walking. All right. So here's that recipe management, and here's exactly what we just talked about, right? The original recipe here, correct unit of measure in pounds, 211, and I think, yeah, $27,000 is what we're getting out here when we switch to gallons with our October test. Now, the next step, right? We set our recipe up, and if you don't deal a lot with recipe management, there's a great skills kickstart on that one too. So check that out. But next up, we go to batch management. That recipe management is our template, and then we put it into effect in batch management where we express those batches, put in our specific units, and then when we can recall those recipes every time we create a batch. So adjust the template itself in recipe management, put it to work in batch management. In batch management, our production orders are going to populate production stages and production components from those recipes. So we saw the recipe stage there, and we saw my dark type 2 malt was a recipe component. In batch management, they're production stages and production components because we are putting them into production. So how it happens, that incorrect unit conversion led to inflation. We saw that 27,000. And it does it usually that mass to volume. So that was an easy example to bring up. It could be somebody fat fingered, you know, the costing on a purchase transaction, and that escalated it. And then from there, it snowballed, right? And so we just have to walk it back to figure that out. And we'll look at how that costing populates on purchase trans later on. But this may not be your costing problem, but I will show you how to create a costing solution. So we can track costing as batches are completed. We view that costing in production order edit, review and fix the error notices as they occur, and update the recipe. I put that bullet in there about error notices because we put a lot of tools uh, into this process, and we put a lot of safeguards up to keep you from making this mistake. So I had to trick the system in order to make this mistake. I had to run through 2 red flags and break it. So it happens. You can do it on accident. I did it on purpose. And so along the way, I did get error notices for, I think I have them in this slide. Here we go. Here's some error checkpoints. The following products use a unit of measure that does not match the unit of measure type of the package. So, like I said, this is a mass product set in pounds, and I set the unit of measure to gallons. So they do not equal. The system recognizes this is going to inflate your cost. Please fix this. Now, I went around that and adjusted the package type on that product to be able to convert. So don't do that, and you won't have a problem. Stick with mass and volume with volume. This other one was the following packages do not have valid conversion units. Please correct the value of the package case weight in pounds or ounces per case. Same deal, right? The system's saying, hey, this package doesn't have the ability to transfer to volume. And so we made it. But this popped up in batch edit. So when I'm creating that batch and adjusting some of the timing or the equipment that it's in and reviewing the costing, and then this one popped up over on the right side in the expression of that batch to say, hey, we're not going to save this because it's wrong. So it made me go fix it. Listen to your errors and your warnings, and then proceed once you fix those issues. So second line of defense, error. Now, the production order edit costing view. So if you are looking at batch management, you go into check out your costing there. We have a few places you can do it. We made it really easy in the production costing confirmation dashboard, which is now required before you can close a period. We'll get to that one. But the other way to look at it and review those batches is going to be in batch management. So you can go into batch management, click on that production order, edit it, and you can view the costing all the way down as it accumulates through that batch. So our correct unit of measure in pounds here, we see that, and the incorrect on our October test here. And a different total cost here in this view, but same problem that I created for you. I do want to jump to that. So let's back out of this and check out batch management. Here's that Oktoberfest, right? Batch management here. Best way to get to batch management is going to be from your production cloud home under your production tab on the dashboard and jump to batch management, right? You can always type it in the search bar. Same with recipe management. We have great links for you to get there from that home page. Here in batch management, If we drop down here, I can see my stages, the equipment, and I completed this one already. That way we didn't run into any of those errors as we review it. So if I jump in and edit it here, here we go. We can see that costing. There's my dark type, 96 cents, $211, looking perfect with that unit of measure of pounds. As we scroll through, we can see the next stages and what we're turning out as we proceed in our process here and as we transform these raw components into a finished good, or at least a whip product that we're going to put into a finished good here with my bright whip for Oktoberfest. Okay, so that looks great. What's it look like when it's wrong? So I have a couple of our production orders here pulled up in batch management for the October test. That's because, like I said, we're going to get errors. The system doesn't want you to make this mistake, but maybe you already have it in place and we need to get it fixed. Either way, if we look at the completed here and go to edit that, there it is. This dark type 2, 122 per unit, $27,000 on that total cost. So still see that same issue. It did pull through from recipe management, populated here in batch management, and now we can see this total cost inflated all the way down, right? So 28,000, 28 and a half coming through at the end of this. We got to notice that, right? Where can we notice that? And that's where our costing tools are going to come into play. And we're going to start talking about those here soon. Soon, like right now. So our costing tools. This is the view of a product type. In our product types, we have a costing method, and there are two main ones that we see, right? Average cost. Most of my producers are average cost. Our small batch brewery up to our larger distillation customers, co-packers, they're average costing. What average costing does, we'll take a look, but it averages out the cost of our on-floor inventory to give you your current laid-in cost. The other one, the other costing method that we see is going to be the FIFO method, which is first in, first out, and that's a layered costing method. So the costing tools that we put into place help you to recognize it faster based on the costing method that you have set on that product type. Depends on what tools you can employ to get those problems fixed sooner. So cost type, costing method lives on the product types. This is some coding like type here. So don't be alarmed. That just means product types table and the field is costing method. Inventory record, purchase trans, field population, and costing determinant. So I'm going to take a look at the inventory record with you here in a second, and we're going to look at the purchase trans for that dark type 2 malt and review where that cost came from and what it should look like, right? How is that being determined? Then we're going to jump into the FIFO cost adjustment versus the average cost adjustment and what those two do differently, but how they're essentially doing the same job and you're inputting the same information. It just depends on which costing method you have set on that product type for your products. Then we will roll through production costing confirmation. Now, I mentioned it before. It is important. It is your last line of defense before you seal up that completed production run and that batch. And so before that journal entry gets computed and sent wherever it goes, we have to review those. And the big essential one I just want to keep harping on is review that unit of measure. That's typically where we get out of sorts. Okay, the costing tools here. So average costing is calculated, FIFO costing is layered. The average costing is we take the cost for each time we purchase and have a purchase transaction for that product, we average that cost together and for as long as that product is in our on-floor inventory. So as soon as we use up the batch of that product at that price, it's no longer averaged into our total cost. So yeah, average it with the other purchase trans as long as that inventory is on floor. That we could adjust it using the average cost adjustment tool because it's average costing. And really, this is what it looks like, the sum of the extended price over the on-hand uh, inventory. Now that FIFO costing, it's layered. So the layer of the cost that product comes in on the purchase transaction is consistent throughout. So as long as I am using that batch, I am using it at that cost. It's not going to average with the other on-floor inventory that I have. Whenever I deplete that batch, it's gone. That cost is gone. I'm using a different batch at a different cost. It's adjusted using the FIFO adjustment tool, and right? The per unit cost is going multiplied by the number of units that you use will give you that extended price, right? It's straightforward FIFO cost. Um, we call it layers because there's one layer used before others. But now that we have that batch tracking through, right, you can choose the layers that you want to assign into your batch management production. But otherwise, if you were just pulling them out at random, it would first in, first out. So we would pull from the back first, right? So that your goods weren't expiring while you were using the latest products. And that's where that FIFO name comes from. So first in, first out, your layered costing. So here are those cost adjustment tools. Let's look at them for real. First, I want to jump you to this inventory. So I told you I was going to do it. This is our inventory table. This is the product here. That's that dark type 2. And I pulled in a subtable here for purchase transactions. Now, I know I didn't give you a screenshot of this one to warn you, but I mentioned it. And so the product here, dark type 2, purchase transactions, we can see they come in, how many units were ordered, the FOB they came in on. So that's our freight on board. That's our cost right there at 96 cents, right? These different purchase trends average out to give us our cost. Now, for these and for these specifically, these are actually like production purchases in the background as we proceed through that process. But um, you can see where that costing comes from on those purchase transactions. So whenever we're receiving that product off the dock and they're confirming those purchases, confirming those units, confirming um, the unit of measure that we received it in, it's very important, right? Because that costing, that average laden cost here does get pushed through to that inventory record. And then we see it populate in those recipes, populate in our batches, and ultimately contribute greatly to the total cost of our batches, as we can see. If you are diving into your costing issues and you think you may have one, come here and check, right? This is where you need to come see, what does it show my laden cost at? And okay, if that's correct, then what's my current cost at? And that's where our average costing tools are going to help you out. I can pull up the average cost tool here, and in our system, in our test system here, we are in average costing, right? The production, the product type there is set to average cost for that costing method. And so I'm mostly going to be dealing with average cost adjusting here, but we will look at that FIFO adjustment as well. With average cost adjustment, here's product 4127. That's our dark type 2. We see it here. And my cost looks good, right? That batch running through the system did not inflate my cost yet because it really hasn't hit the books yet. It's been completed, but it hasn't been confirmed and moved forward. So we caught it in time, but I can't fix it because my cost isn't wrong yet. I can adjust my cost here. So if this was inflated and it did show up $122 per unit, I could adjust it. I just hit adjust, type in the price or the cost, sorry, that it should be. And where do I find the cost that it should be? From the previous historical purchase transactions, from that inventory record or the purchase transactions table filtered to this product, we can go in and see that latent cost. Once I have my costs set correctly here, I can recalculate that production order and recalculate the costing back into production orders within a 60-day window. But I can do it multiple times. So I can do 60 days, 60 days, 60 days, all the way back to the start of the year or beyond for my verified production orders. So this is fantastic. It will pull it up. It will show you when I go to recalculate. If I was to put in, let's see if we have any in this system. I set it for September, and we may not, right? Because it may not catch it yet, and that's okay. So impacted production orders. This is what I want you to see. 0 right now. That's okay. If I did have some production orders that were going to be impacted from this change, it would populate with the number there, but it would also be a link so I could hop straight to those production orders, get a view of them, and start making those changes or confirming those changes, right? Because I'm going to make the changes here, and that would be to push back the new cost into those production orders, but then I can go double check and make sure my recipe and my production components are populating with the correct cost. That's average cost adjustment. Set your cost, know the time period that you want to set it back into, adjust your cost. If I look at that FIFO adjustment here, it's very similar. The data is a little different. So I can select the product, right? And here I've chosen that dark type 2. I can adjust the costing now, and nothing populates for me. And this is really what I wanted to walk to. So if I come here, there's that dark type 2. We could also select product type and then look at some different features there. But then I go to adjust the costing for the product I selected. And it says, hey, you haven't really made many transactions with this. There's certain dates I can look back. If I have a specific invoice number, I can look to that one to pull that up. But because we are average costing, I'm not going to see anything populate here for that product. But the next step for you would be select the layer of costing that you want to fix and then decide the dates for posting, right? So same thing that we did with average costing. We said fix the cost. We decided the dates to push it back to and fixed it. This is going to do the same thing. Fix your cost, select the data, and then select the dates that you want to push it back to and review those adjustments, just like we could review those production orders that were going to be impacted from our average cost adjustment tool. So same workflow, a little bit different data. Let's see what it looks like in still frame. Average cost adjustment, select the product, adjust the cost, calculate it back, right? Same thing with that FIFO, select the product, adjust the layer, and select the posting section, that date range that we want to calculate it back to. These are very important. They're very powerful tools. Be careful, but use them to correct your costing if you have a costing issue, right? You can always go back and readjust and recalculate if you do not get it right the first time. But with your purchase transactions influencing your costing, you should get it right the first time. Okay. This is like the culmination of everything we've been working towards. The production costing confirmation dashboard. So this is required production order costing review to close the financial period. So you have to do this. We made that, I think, 2408. You have to do this now. You have to go and confirm your costing before you can close that period financially. It is important. We suggest that you do it weekly. So if you have like a weekly management meeting, get together and look over your costing. Maybe look over it before you get in there, but definitely review your costing. If you stay up on a week to week schedule, it doesn't get out of hand. You're not reviewing the whole month of production all at once and sitting down for 4 hours. No, should be pretty quick as long as everything's straightforward. Now here, we see the Oktoberfest on top, and we see unit of measures barrels for that bright whip and the cost at $59 per barrel. Total value 1792 there that we came out with. When we look at the October test, way different. Same quantity of barrels, unit cost 467, total value $14,000, and there it is again, consumed at that 122 per unit on that dark type 2 production component that we zeroed in on. So easy to see, right? It should look like the top one. It looks like the bottom one. We are 9 times, 8.5 times higher than we should be. So easy to see. And then we go, okay, what's my next step? I need to go dive into that production order and fix this problem, or I can use my costing tools to make the change for me, right? And we saw how to do that. But what if I just want to go and walk it back? Well, let's go take a look, right? Before we jump away from production costing confirmation, because I'm going to show it to you on the site, it displays the cost by batch, production order, and individual component. So we just walked through that, but there is that batch for October test. Here is that specific production order 1086. And then we see my unit costs and all those production components underneath with that unit of measure. So I can say clearly it shows gallons. That's incorrect. I can check it against the one above it. It's pounds. And now I know where I need to go focus my energy. Okay, let's jump away. So if I'm in batch management and I want to make a change, right? And I need to go back and fix this. I can go into that edit screen and I can undo it manually, right? If we're not at a point where we can push that cost adjustment back using the average costing tool, then we can come here and walk it back. Now, the problem with walking it back is it's just a few more clicks, right? So I have to start at the top and undo my completed production order. And then I have to go uncomplete every stage to walk it back. So it's undone here. Yep, walk that back, please. And I'm going to continue to press these buttons so that you can see in real time what that looks like. We'll undo that next one. And roll it back. We're lucky my internet is on today. Otherwise, this would take even longer. But this is why we created some of these tools, because doing this for every production order, for every production stage, if you've had incorrect costing for a month, it could be very time consuming, very tedious. And so here you can see that average cost adjustment tool, even though I have to go check costing, correct costing, push it back, review some of the potential updated production orders, and then go confirm that costing, it's still probably going to be much quicker than walking back your production orders one step at a time to make those changes one by one. And finally, we get to our stage here and we see that dark type 2 with gallons. Okay, we still have to undo it before I can make the change. And now we can come here. I can delete that gallons dark type 2. I could add a new production component for it. Let's go ahead. 220. We're still sticking with our pounds now and save it. Great. And then I can delete the incorrect one. And now we've corrected that issue, right? We see our new one down below. And we see our costing now corrected, 96 cents, $211 for our total cost for that recipe production component in this first mash louder stage. So we fixed it here. And now we have to input all the data again to express this production order in batch management. So now I could save the changes or jump into production processing and start inputting the batches again that I used and the quantities to walk this all the way forward one more time. So it is a little more tedious, but you can walk them back. If it's just one or two, it's not so bad, right? The average cost adjustment tool is there to save you some time. It is a great resource for you, but if it's just one stage, you can just walk it back and make that change.
Ellington, a question has come through the chat. The question is, I remember from my implementation talking about the benefits of doing single stage recipes versus multi-stage recipes. And this is a multi-stage recipe. Is there an argument here for doing single versus multi-stage recipes?
Yeah, sure. Typically with your single and multi-stage recipes, the reason you're doing that is to fit it into your production process. Um, or it's to recognize costing for your TTB, uh, DRO, BRO, WRO tax reports. And so if you have them set up that way, that's probably the reason. We have those production stage groups so that you can adjust where that costing hits. But I do not recommend just changing your production process or those recipes to be single stage just to save you some time in case you have a costing issue. Um, I would much rather see you keep your production flow as close to the real process as possible, right? And what we would see is like separate a hot side from a cold side in brewing. We would see that here in the production orders in the steps that we're going to complete before moving to the next production order. So I would say, sure, you could, but that would be just as much work as walking back a few production orders whenever you have a costing issue. So um, do not change it on account of your costing.
Makes sense. Like why change our entire process for something that we're correcting hopefully for the future too, right?
Right, right. And we put the tools in place so that to make this easy for you. Like I said, you could still do it in one swoop. So um, do not base do don't change your production process based on a one-time fixable issue.
All
Thanks.
right. Thanks so much.
Okay, we are going to jump back here to our slides. All right, that was our production costing confirmation, and we saw what that looked like. So, um, and then we walked it back and we made that change. So this is now pounds, not gallons, and we fixed our issue for our single production order. Now, what was that order of operations again? How can I fix my problems? Where do I go first? So here it is. How do I fix my costing? One, identify the problem. Remember the tools that we have there and the checkpoints along the way. So recipe management, we're outlining the costs for those recipe components as you input them. We are not defaulting that unit of measure into those recipes. Instead, you do have to know how you're going to deplete that product and what that conversion may be. Mass to mass, volume to volume, those are the safest. If you have it set up where you can do mass to volume, that's great, but we still got to get those measurements right. When we go into batch management, we can use that batch edit to check our costing there to see how now that we've gone into production, that costing has flowed from the recipe into our production orders. And then finally, we have that production costing confirmation weekly, I'm saying, very harshly aggressively recommending to you to do it weekly and save yourself some headache there so that you can close those periods, but also fix any potential issues that you find. In that batch management, we also have those errors that are popping up, right? So we're trying to tell you something's wrong. Please listen to them. And then trace it back. Okay, we found an issue. Now what? Go check out your product configuration. Was it a unit of measure on the product? Is it a weird costing issue with your product type where you set that costing method? Is it in your package, right? Um, and then, okay, what should my costing be? Go back to your purchase transactions, see what you should expect, see what that difference is. Maybe it was just one purchase transaction that came in. Call your procurement department, see what's up, right? And get that fixed either on that purchase transaction or in your production. And we see that, like I said, unit of measure, unit of measure, unit of measure. That's where we see it inflated most and the harshest. So double check those units of measure and then make the fix. Correct that unit measure, correct that costing layer, correct your package, walk back that production order if you need to, right? If it's just one stage, not too bad, or push it back. Use your cost adjustment tools. You have the average cost adjustment, you have the FIFO adjustment. They're there for you to help you in case you run into one of these scenarios. And then always remember to go back and make sure it's done. Don't just hit adjust and go, phew. No, go look at that production component and say, okay, yes, all of my costing looks good. It wasn't more places than one. I cleaned up everywhere that it existed. So um, follow your order of operations, right? Recognize it, walk it back, make the fix, and you should be good to correct your costing. Do we have any questions from the audience there on costing or the tools that we have available? What can I do for you?
I haven't seen anything else come through the chat, so we're just going to leave it open for a minute for anybody who might be typing something out. I also have the ability to unmute you, so if you'd like to raise your hand or request to be unmuted, we can certainly do that as well. While we're waiting for people to type any of those remaining questions out, I just want to take a second and say thank you, Ellington, for another great session, for leading this one today, and thank you to our attendees for coming. We hope it was really helpful. We are going to be posting a link to a survey when we close out this session. We would love to hear your feedback about this session and about things that you'd like to see in the future. We are starting to plan for 2025. So if you have some great ideas about the things that you'd like to see, oh, please send them over in that survey because you're talking to the gal who is going to be creating that schedule soon. So look for that. In this time, we did have a question that came through. You mentioned that production costing confirmation is required a couple of times. Can you explain more about what's required about it?
Yeah, so you do have to go through and review the costing on those production orders and confirm that the costing looks correct before you can close out the financial period. So once you've completed those production orders, right, before we can verify them, you'll have to confirm that costing. And in order to close out your financial period with your verified invoices, verified purchases, you'll also have to have those verified production orders. So before you can uh, run the end of day, end of month process, you will have to go through and correct that or confirm your production costing.
Awesome. Thanks, Ellington. All right. I'm seeing nothing else, but this recording is going to be posted on the recording archive, hopefully by end of day today. So take a look over there if you wanted to reference it in the future. We'll make sure that it gets linked. So look in the recording archive. You'll also be able to find it in help resources if you search for it. And thanks again, everybody, for attending today. Hope you have a good one.